Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everyone betwixt. Today I want to talk about Walking Ballista, but I want to be clear, I'm not advocating a ban. It feels like we can't talk about, you know, the complicated or perhaps weaker play patterns that cards bring up, or how healthy they are for a format, or how good a design they were, without someone getting really mad and wanting it banned. I mean, if anyone watching this is part of a Magic the Gathering Facebook group, you might know how bad it can get. I am sick to death of having people killing my creatures. All these removal spells are so fucking lame and broken, and I hate it. I know I have spoken before about banning those fucking islands, but honestly, I think it's swamps that cause all the pain in my life. I am hereby, unironically, asking that Wizards of the Coasts bans swamps and islands and that fucking shuffler, and once upon a time, because people keep casting it in my fucking end step, and that's my end step, not yours, you fucking cunt! And post. Guess I'll like my own post. That's the correct etiquette, right? Facebook might just be one of the 9 circles of hell. So this video is to talk about a pet hate of mine and a concern for the future of Magic. Please, won't nobody think of the future of Magic? Today I want to talk about why Walking Ballista was a fucking mistake. I'm Vince, also known as Peasant Kenobi on the internet. I'm the Magic the Gathering content creating equivalent of not banning a problematic card in your flagship format and then emergency banning it 3 days later. Or perhaps, instead of making it look like an emergency ban this time, you'll just reschedule the next ban announcement to maybe a few weeks after the last one. And I'll clarify again, this video isn't about banning, so I'm just throwing shade because that's the relatable content that youths are into these days. 100 emoji, wet splash emoji, milk, milk, milk me. And now for the main event. Colourless cards are a problem. These are cards that can function in any deck and provide all decks with similar tools, and this can be a good thing in some ways. Pithing Needle, Pithing Needle, Pithing Needle, Pithing Needle and Sorcerer's Spyglass are both examples of colourless cards that give all decks similar tools, almost like safety valves in Standard, for example, to help with problematic permanents that these cards can answer. Because let's face it, Wizards of the Coast will not stop printing problematic planeswalkers that are fucking annoying and obnoxious and way too powerful, because those things sell packs and function as a good front for the game. Apparently the next core set is Teferi themed, because either they're trolling or they don't listen to the sort of zeitgeist of the game. People don't really like Teferi because the cards you printed were too fucking good. But perhaps that's the topic for another video or rant later down the line. So I'm not here to complain about Pithing Needle or Sorcerer's Spyglass. I'm here to discuss when colourless cards homogenise decks, or even worse, warp entire formats. Now, when I say warp formats, I'm not actually referring to Walking Ballista. There are more egregious examples of colourless cards that help to highlight and illustrate the points I'm going to make. So allow me to use those examples to give context to my points, and I'll come to Walking Ballista in a moment. In recent memory, we saw the banning of Smuggler's Copter. It was not a tool or an answer that functioned as a safety valve. It was actually a very efficient threat that provided utility to any colour that needed it. It fit into any deck, no matter the colour, that played creatures, and if you haven't noticed with Standard, creatures are pretty important for the most part. On January 9th, 2017, Smuggler's Copter was banned alongside Emrakul the Promised End, and another colourless card, and Reflector Mage. The reason for that ban was that it was too efficient, and it showed up in too many decks. You see, colourless cards shouldn't do what coloured cards do, and at least not for the same mana cost, and certainly not for less. The moment you print a cost-efficient looter scooter into a colourless card, into an artifact, you diminish what other colours in Magic can do. Why would a white deck splash red or blue for card selection, card draw, card filtering, literal looting effects, if they can get it on a colourless body that slots into the deck anyway, with no cost to the deck? You aren't making your mana worse, and the card itself doesn't really have much of a downside. So in short, cards like Smuggler's Copter diminish the value of the colour pie, which is not only a flavourable thing for Magic the Gathering, but I think it's important in terms of balancing mechanics and giving the game an identity. Making each individual colour of Magic less, well, individual, unique, or idiosyncratic is never going to be a good thing. It affects the way people relate to the game, and it affects the balancing of things like mana bases and colours and mechanics across different deck types and archetypes that each colour kind of embodies. In many ways, conventionally, the idea of colourless cards that did the same thing as other cards is that they'll cost a little bit more. We've all seen them in the limited environments, right? Your colourless golems that are 4 mana or 5 mana 3/3s, or 6 mana 5/5s. You would get better cards than that in green, or perhaps even white, another colour that gets big creatures half the time in limited, but the colourless card goes into any deck, so it's balanced out by costing a little bit more. Instead, Smuggler's Copter was super cheap, super efficient, giving you a utility. It was just super, so it got fucking banned. There was another obnoxious yet weirdly accepted example of this in older Magic, in older formats. And I'm not talking about the Power 9 here, I'm not talking about Black Lotus or any of the mocks. I'm actually talking about what I see as the honorary 10th card in the Power 9. This is Sol Ring. It fits into every single commander deck, unless you've got some sort of fringe, very linear combo deck that wouldn't utilise it, or you're looking to hamstring yourself on purpose to balance yourself out, or perhaps you want some sort of restriction on your deck building to breed creativity. Aside from those three things, which are very much self-imposed restrictions for the most part, you should just play a Sol Ring because it makes your deck better. To put it bluntly, if you're not playing Sol Ring, your deck is probably worse than the version of the deck that is playing Sol Ring. That's a topic for a different video and a different rant, I'll give you that, so I'm not going to focus too much on the Sol Ring here. But the point is, it's a colourless card that ramps better than most green cards do. It takes away from green's colour identity. One argument is that it balances the format and allowing other colours to have the ramp that green has, but then green has its ramp and this. So that doesn't sound like balance, that just sounds like a colourless card homogenizing deck choices again. Like, why would you not play Sol Ring? And that brings us nicely to Walking Ballista. Now, there's a few reasons that Walking Ballista bugs me as a Magic player. Some of them are more individual to me, and some of them are wider problems with the game. Firstly, I genuinely believe Wizards of the Coast hate creatures with 1 toughness. Like, they really fucking hate them. Since Walking Ballista hit our packs, sleeves and Magic tables, we have had Plague Engineer, Red and 6 and Goblin Chainwhirler over the last couple of years. All cards that hose tiny little mana dorks and utility X1s in white. Some of my favourite decks just keep getting worse and worse as Wizards of the Coast continue to print cards that shoot and kill things like Thalia and Phyrexian Revoker. Remember when I said there are colourless sort of answers or valves or cards that could stop problematic permanent things like Ren and 6, for example? Well, yeah, this is one of them. And it dies to all this X1 hate. It's okay, little fella. Your day will come. Or maybe it won't. But that's more of a personal issue with how it affects decks that I like to play, although it is a wider issue. There is discussion amongst the tribal deck communities. I know that Nikachu, who pilots a lot of Merfolk, really hates Plague Engineer. Goblin Lackey, a regular player of Goblin Lackey and Goblin decks in Legacy, is frustrated that his favourite deck is getting worse because of things like Plague Engineer, Ren and 6, and similar. But like I said, you could easily dismiss this as a personal issue I have with some of my decks getting pushed down in the metagame by effects like this. And to be completely transparent, Walking Ballista is a one-of in a lot of my Legacy Death and Taxes lists, because it makes the mirror easier to win, and it helps against the worst matchup in the format, Elves. And it's pretty good at burning out, like, and ending the game against Miracles and stuff as well if the game goes really long. It's fetchable for Recruiter of the Guard and that sort of thing. I play Walking Ballista. I play it in combo decks myself. But let me give you some more info on why that frustrates me too. So I play the card because the card is really fucking good. The problem is that Walking Ballista doesn't really have any downsides per se. Sure, it's an artifact creature, which makes it one of the most vulnerable, like, permanent types in Magic, because it's vulnerable to artifact and creature removal, I get that. And I guess, arguably, it can be needed, but I don't think that's much of a downside, honestly. If your deck would benefit from this card as a bit player in its engine, or as its endgame combo piece, then there's very little reason not to play it because it's just so damn good, versatile, and has very minimal downside to including in your deck build. One of the fundamental things about Magic that balances the game is the idea of mana costs and extra mana colours. So cards that tend to be really powerful, like for example Siege Rhino, is arguably harder to cast. Same with Goblin Chainwhirler, because their colour costs are restrictive on what you can do with your mana base. Walking Ballista don't give a shit about that. The card just can be played off of any mana you want. So perhaps your deck is a combo deck that makes either a lot of mana, like an arbitrarily large amount of mana, or nearing on infinite, although infinite doesn't really exist in Magic. So what's your win con now? Do you play an Emrakul and go to combat or pass the turn to them and get to kill them the next turn? Or do you splash red and Banefire them to death, for example, or a Fireball in formats where Banefire isn't legal? Perhaps you loop Pyrite Spellbomb out of the graveyard to shoot your opponent to death. Or perhaps you play a colourless artifact creature that can be played at any point on your curve, is a utility creature that acts as removal early on, can have infinite mana dumped into it whilst it's on the board, because there's just a lot of text on Walking Ballista and all of it's good shit. Being an artifact and a creature, as well as being colourless, is all really upside, because all the tutors get it, from Enlightened Tutor to Recruiter of the Guard. Hell, fuck it, can be get with Ancient Stirrings, the new Once Upon a Time, you can even get it off Duskwatch Recruiter in the Devoted Company deck. Yeah, it's kind of just all upside from there, right? So essentially, why would you play any of these other combo finishers when you can just make infinite mana and kill your opponent with Super Saiyan style, like charging up all that mana, instead of going to combat? And even then, let's say your opponent has hexproof from a Witchbane Orb, or more commonly, Leyline of Sanctity. Well, Walking Ballista isn't just a big shooting gun, it's also an infinitely large or arbitrarily large creature too. This card really doesn't have a whole lot of downside in the decks that need it or want it. Do you understand and see where I'm going with this? There's no reason to play anything else in those slots. It homogenizes these combo decks, and it also fits into other strategies too, making it a very big staple in Eternal play. Once upon a time, company decks would combo you out with Finks or Redcap, or Food Chain would go get an Emrakul off of a Fierce Empath and use its infinite mana from the Mist Hollow Griffin combo to cast Emrakul, or Bomberman would loop Pyrite Spellbombs to kill you. Nowadays, all three of those decks will just get a Walking Ballista, make it really big, and shoot you to death with that machine gun bastard. They may all function significantly different up until the end, but they all come to this one ending threat that can also be played on curve to help you out earlier. It's just really fucking good. As an idea of decks that play this, I'm going to read them off instead of trying to remember. Hardened Scales Affinity, Devoted Company, Stoneforge variants of Devoted Company, Bomberman and Legacy, Food Chain and Legacy, Eldrazi Stompy and Legacy, and then less so as like the end game of the deck. You have Green and Eldrazi Tron playing some main or usually in the sideboard. Mystic Forge combo can play it as a win con again, similar to what Bomberman does in Legacy. And then you've got the weird fringe applications of it, like I said, in Death and Taxes and other sort of decks like that. So the card is a staple that also makes combo decks all look the fucking same. But some of you are probably thinking, Vince, shut the fuck up, who cares? Staples are staples. Why aren't you moaning about Liliana the Veiled or Aether Vial or other cards? Well, maybe I will fucking moan about those in other videos. But to clarify, I don't think the card needs banning or anything like that. I just think perhaps the card's initial inclusion was kind of a mistake, but that genie is out of the bottle now. And I also think, most importantly, it can be a cautionary tale for game design and hopefully for the people who design our beloved game of Magic the Gathering. Artifacts have always been kind of broken, right? Like, in the early game, we had Mox and we had a Black Lotus, and then eventually we had a Tolarian Academy in the Urza block, so that was busted. And then we come to the modern era where Wizards of the Coast decided that Affinity and all these other mechanics that are part of Mirrodin would try to make artifacts, again, the most universally hated and obnoxious permanent type in all of Magic. And then that's just artifacts. I mean, I'm talking mainly about colourless spells anyway, so don't forget Battle for Zendikar block, where Modern got absolutely ruined because they put in a load of colourless answers that played very well with the soul lands and fast mana that was available that combined with those colourless things. And also, you could play any colours you wanted because the majority of your cards were colourless. Wastes was kind of a balancing thing because that was like a 4th or 5th colour in your deck, but it didn't really balance it because the Eldrazi deck was absolutely dominant. The reason being that the Eldrazi, much like I've said about Walking Ballista and Smuggler's Copters, didn't really have downsides. Reality Smasher and Thought-Knot Seer were just better than 5 and 4 mana versions of those cards in other colours. So, yeah, why would you not play them in your deck? So we had some slew of bannings because of that block as well, and then we came to Kaladesh. Kaladesh was mirrored in 2.0, not only in the artifacts matters kind of thing, but that the set is the most broken set in recent memory, with the most amount of bans, I believe. I'd have to check the exact numbers. Maybe I should do my research before I film a YouTube video. But it's got a lot of bans in it, and a lot of pushed fucking cards, including Walking Ballista. Perhaps, as we look back over time, War of the Spark and Modern Horizons might look worse, but yeah. Kaladesh was silly good. But since January 2017, which is when Aether Revolt came out, when Walking Ballista showed up, I guess perhaps they learned a lesson there. Since then, we haven't had anything crop up that is an artifact or colourless in the same way. That's become homogenizing. I guess they've learned from Smuggler's Copter and to a lesser extent Walking Ballista. The reason I refer to it as a cautionary tale is I think they are learning from that mistake, and I don't want them to print more cards like this in future, but then make all decks play it. What I want to see in Magic is variety. Because Magic is one of the most varied and exciting games for that reason. When you play across multiple formats and multiple decks, you see all sorts of crazy stuff going on. This is why I think they should try and slow down formats to allow other cards to breathe. That's why Modern shouldn't be so fast. And that's why I think like colourless cards like Walking Ballista pose a problem, because they make Magic boring by giving every deck the same end or every deck the same curve filler. It's bad enough that we have staples that are just miles better than other cards in similar slots. It's worse still that things like Fatal Push, for example, pushed out the majority. Get it? Pushed out. Do you get it? Pushed out the majority of 2-drops that could be played. Essentially, there is design space. And the more colourless, ridiculous cards you print like this, the more design space you use up. And then the only way to like open up more design space, because these cards are just universally better than any other option, is to start pushing power level. Where your next green 2-drop is more powerful, not just not more universally good, but more powerful and just better than the colourless options, and then we get power creep where we end up like fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's why I think Walking Ballista is a mistake. That's why I think it should be a cautionary tale to game designers everywhere, including the people making this game, and I think they have learned from it. But what do you think? Do you think they've learned from it? Or do you think Warrior Spark and Modern Horizons shows that they've made more fucking errors? I guess they're just not in the same way, right? What other cards do you think are as obnoxious as Walking Ballista or Smuggler's Copter? What other cards do you want to hear me deep dive and talk about from a, I don't know, history of the game and slight design perspective? I'm not a game designer, but I think I have some insights. I play the game so fucking much. Or do you think I'm just being a fucking idiot? Well, sound off in the comment section below and let me know. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, comment, share the video. You should probably follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Twitch too. Sub on Twitch because that helps support me as a content creator, or more importantly, my Patreon link is down below. So when you go down below and click on that and join my Discord as well, send me stuff in my mailbox and love me. Just fucking love me. I'm kind of saying all this shit as a bit of a bit of like all these things you can do, but do some of them. Do some number of those things, and I would appreciate it massively. I've been Vince, also known as President Kenobi on the internet. Thank you for watching, and until next time, think of me as you sip a cold, cold glass of milky milk, or your opponent combo kills you with a Walking Ballista, and you're like, fuck's sake, Vince was right. Ta-ta for now. Oh look, they said that that's the game, lol. That's the game, lol. That's the game, lol.